And that's a mistake. Instead, he must consider the move a6 so that he can start pushing these queenside pawns because now, as you can see, this knight on f6 was creating some pressure on the d4 pawn. Secondly, bringing this knight to e8 isn't just doing anything great. I mean, where will this knight go? And obviously this c7 square is not good. Okay, so in the actual game, after knight e8, here he goes for a4. And now let's suppose if black goes for knight to c7, now comes knight to b5, creating pressure over this knight. And if knight takes b5, a takes b5. And in the next move, white is going to push this pawn, and you can see now white has an open a file by which this position will be better for white. But in the actual game, after this move a4, here he goes for h5. And after that, here Aronian brings his knight back to d1, which opens this c file for this queen. Preparing for rook to c3 so that he can create some pressure over this bishop. But here Hikaru goes for a6. And now it's better to push this pawn to a5, but instead Aronian goes for Okay guys, but here rook to b3 might be the better option for white so that he can target this pawn on b6, because if black tries to guard this pawn by rook to b8, you can see white can simply capture this pawn on a6 by bishop takes a6. So that's why okay, so now Hikaru goes for knight to h4, preparing to push this pawn to g4. And the best move for white is to just push g4, because let's suppose if black goes for en passant, simply white will capture with the h pawn. And if so since this knight is attacked, so he has to go back. Now simply knight to e3, and you can see white will go for knight to f5 in the next move, by which you can see it's targeting this rook, and obviously this position will be better for white. But after knight to h4, here Aronian goes for h3, stopping this pawn push. And guys, now comes the most interesting part of this game. In this position here, white can actually sacrifice his rook by rook to c6. This is because after bishop takes c6, d takes c6. And you can see here black successfully creates a passer. And let's suppose to stop this, if black goes for knight to c7, queen to c4 check, king to h7, knight to c3, developing this knight so that he can either go for this, and if rook to a7, now white can go for b4. Okay, if he pushed b5, a takes b5, a takes b5, knight takes b5, attacking this queen as well as asking for knight exchange. And if queen takes b5, queen takes b5, knight takes b5, bishop takes b5, and now I think you all understand the idea. Okay, so in the actual game, after queen to b8, here Aronian simply slides his king to f1, getting out from any threat. And finally, Aronian goes for this move which I mentioned earlier. He goes for rook to c6 with the same idea of creating a passer on this c file. So that's why after seeing this all, Hikaru goes for b5. But in this position, Aronian finds the another brilliant move. He captured on b5, completely giving up this rook with the same idea, and obviously Hikaru can't capture this rook, so that's why he goes for and after that, here Aronian finds the another brilliant move. Rook at c goes to c6, and now in this position, the only best move for black is to go for bishop to a7, giving up this bishop. This is because if rook takes a7, rook takes a7, so that he can break the connection between the rooks. And after queen takes a7, bishop takes c6, creating a discover attack on this queen. And after this queen moves, simply queen takes a5, b takes a5, bishop to d7, and finally you can see black successfully neutralized all of the attack of white. And obviously after rook to c6, here Hikaru missed that move and he goes for Okay, so now knight to f5 by Hikaru, trying to deflect this pawn so that he can capture this knight on d5. And Aronian captured on f5, queen takes d5. And now rook to a5 is advised for white, threatening to capture this pawn on b5. And if rook takes a5, queen takes a5. Rook takes c6, queen takes b5. Queen takes b5, bishop takes b5, rook to c8, guarding this knight. But bishop takes e8, rook takes e8, knight to f6 check, and yup, that's all. But after rook to c7, here Aronian goes for knight takes g5. He wants to go to e6 square so that he can target this rook. But guys, this move is actually a mistake because of this single move which can be played by black, which is knight to d6. Basically, this move is a defensive move which covers all the weakness of this b5 pawn, which is targeted by the white pieces. But after knight takes g5, here Nakamura also missed that move and he goes for knight to g7, which is a blunder. And yes, this move stops knight to e6. But again, in this position, Aronian finds another crazy move, rook to b6, completely giving up his queen. This is because if rook takes a3, rook takes b8 check, knight to e8, rook takes e8 check, king to g7, knight to e6 check. And you can see this is all over for black. And obviously Hikaru will not get trapped by these moves. So after rook to b6, he goes for knight takes f5. And obviously white cannot capture this rook due to the threat of knight to e3 check. So that's why Aronian goes for now king to h6 by Hikaru, attacking this knight. And guys, now comes this another beautiful move by Aronian, which is king to g1, completely giving up this bishop as well as this knight. And let's suppose if black captured this bishop by rook takes e2, now comes queen takes f5, okay. And if rook takes e1 check, king to h2. And if black decides to capture this pawn on c6 by queen takes c6, rook takes c7, queen takes c7, and finally queen to f6 checkmate. Okay, so let's suppose after king to g1, if black decides to capture this knight on g5 by his king, now white can go for h4. And if knight takes h4, bishop takes h4 check, king takes h4, and finally queen takes c2. And you can see this is also winning for white. So that's why after king to g1, seeing these all possibilities, here Hikaru simply captured on c6. And now you can see here black is preparing for queen to g6 so that he can mate on g2. So that's why after seeing this, here Aronian brings his rook to a7, threatening to play rook to a6 if black goes for queen g6. And in this position, Hikaru Nakamura resigned, because clearly you can see there's nothing black can do to save this game. And let's suppose if he guards this check by rook to c6, queen to b7, threatening queen g7, and to defend this if rook to g6. And there are multiple ways for white to win this game, either by queen to h7 check or just simply capturing this queen. Both positions are winning for white. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.